Make Walters your spot for Monday Night Football next week as the Commanders aim to go 2-1. They visit Joe Burrow and the Bengals at 8:15 p.m.
Tá a fim de ver os grandes craques do futebol europeu? Tá com aquela vontade de ver um golaço? Um clássico do futebol inglês ou El Clássico espanhol? A gente tá contigo e com o Vini Júnior, o Haaland, o Mbappé e muito mais. O Disney Plus tá com tudo e o melhor futebol do mundo tá no Disney Plus. Assista ao futebol europeu ao vivo no Disney Plus.
Here's the set. The kick and the pitch. Swinging a tapper, third base side. It's going to be a tough one. It's a spinner. It's picked up by Irvin. The throw to first is in time for the out. And Irvin is fired up about it. He just raised his palms to the sky with a heck of a play to throw out Vientos on the swinging bunt up the third base line. A rare show of emotion, really reminiscent of the 4th of July when Irvin pumped up the crowd after 8 innings. Here finishing off the 4th, he was so fired up about it. Here's the pitch. Swing and a miss. He struck him out with another sinking fastball. So Jake Irvin works through the top of the Mets order very quickly. And he has 5 strikeouts through 6 shutout innings. Winning run at third, last of the 10th. Barnes sets at the letters. He deals. Swinging a line drive left field down the line toward the corner. And this ball game is over. Bader scores the winning run as Marte's being mobbed rounding first. The Mets rally to beat the Nationals 2-1.
And welcome to Nats Chat for Tuesday, September 17th, 2024, along with MASNsports.com Nationals insider Mark Zuckerman, who was at Citi Field in New York City. I'm Al Galdi, host of the Al Galdi podcast. Well, it is official. The Nats have clinched a 5th consecutive losing regular season. Monday night, a 2-1 10-inning loss at the New York Mets in Game 1 of a 3-game series. The Nats fell to 68-82, including just 5-11 in extra inning games. The Nats in this game blew a 1-0 8th-inning lead. But also in this game was a terrific outing by Nats starting pitcher Jake Irvin. This installment of the Nats Chat podcast brought to us by Mason Kalfas and his team of 10 legal recruiters at Zenith Legal in Washington, D.C. Check out Mason's website today, zenithlegal.com, or call or text Mason anytime, 202-486-3535. The Mets right now are in quite the battle with the Atlanta Braves for the National League's 3rd and final wildcard spot. Jake Irvin on Monday night found himself pitching in a game with postseason implications, and Irvin was up for the challenge. 1 run and 7 1/3 innings. Mark, yes, the Nats did lose this game, but the story of the game from a Nats perspective was Jake Irvin. What a job by him in this game.
100% this was Jake Irvin game that deserves all the attention that we can give to it and heap all the praise we can heap upon him. As you said, this is a big game for him and for the team to be facing a Mets team that is desperate to win every game it can down the stretch. That probably, if you were to ask them deep down, would tell you that they believe they should sweep this series against the quote-unquote lowly Nationals, while the Braves are facing the Dodgers, and here's your chance to overtake them, maybe create some cushion in that wild card race. And what Jake Irvin did was shrug all that off and go out and pitch yet again a brilliant game against the Mets, very similar to the game that he pitched against them on July 4th, albeit in hostile territory this time. And the shame of this is that not only that the team didn't win the game, but that he ends up giving up the tying run, or is charged with the tying run because he allowed the leadoff double in the 8th. That was a fantastic outing from him, and maybe the moment of the year on the play he made to end the 4th inning with the bases loaded and the emotion he showed after that. I know this doesn't really mean anything to the Nationals. This game doesn't make or break their season, but the way he reacted to it, it felt like this was a make or break game for them.
Perhaps the single best defensive play by a Nats pitcher this season, maybe in multiple seasons. So Irvin in this game officially allowed 1 run in 7 1/3 innings, 5 strikeouts, 1 walk. He gave up just 4 hits, which were a double and 3 singles. He was pumping strikes, something fierce, man. 94 pitches, 65 strikes, a mere 29 balls. And yes, the defensive play. Irvin, in the bottom of the 4th, escaped a bases-loaded 2-out jam with a tremendous defensive play. He, on a tapper toward third base off the bat of Mark Vientos, made a barehanded scoop of the ball right in front of the third baseline, about halfway up the line, and then fired a bullet to first baseman Juan Yepes, who made a nice stretch for the putout. And the cherry on top of the whipped cream on top of the sundae was Irvin's reaction to the play. That was inspiring, man. That got me fired up. I think that got a lot of people fired up. Awesome to see Irvin react to that play the way that he reacted to that play.
I mean, it felt like the way you react to getting out of a big jam in October, not in September, and certainly not in September for a team that, as you just said, clinched another losing record for the season. But good for him for feeling it in that moment and understanding the magnitude of that play. We've talked about how bad the Nationals defense has been, and their pitchers' defense has not been good as a whole. And yet individually, they do have guys who have played quite well, and he is high on that list. He actually ranks among the metrics as one of the better defensive pitchers out there. He takes pride in it. He said, in the moment, you just kind of react to what's happening. It's the throw. I mean, getting to the ball is one thing, but it's making the throw on target. It's so easy to grab that ball and either have a bad grip or to rush it, and the ball ends up sailing on you. And then it's not just that you didn't get there in time to get the runner, but that the ball gets away from the first baseman and now multiple runs score on it. So to have the pinpoint accuracy on that throw in that moment was fantastic. And I loved the way that he reacted to it. I'm sure he's got a phone full of text messages from family and friends having some fun with him about it. And we're going to be seeing, I think, that video over and over again. It may become a new meme for this team, but what a moment for him to do that. And we've seen this a few times from him this year. Big show of emotion. Usually it comes at the end of his starts. This one obviously came at the end of the fourth inning. And so the other part that to me is impressive is he didn't let that take all the energy out of him. He came right back and had 3 really clean innings after that. And he talked about that as well, bringing the emotions back down when he got to the dugout and realizing there was still a ways to go in this game.
So the Nats starting third baseman for this game was Ildemaro Vargas. I don't think it's a coincidence that Vargas, one of the more charismatic players on the team, one of the more likable players on the team, was right next to Irvin as he was coming off the field. And I feel like Irvin maybe fed off the Vargas energy, and that maybe contributed to the show of emotion that we got from Jake Irvin. But that was really cool to see. So you take a step back now with Jake Irvin. This is his age 27 season. The Nats took him in the 4th round of the 2018 MLB draft out of the University of Oklahoma. It was on May 3rd, 2023 that the Nats recalled Irvin from AAA Rochester. He at the time was only the Nats' number 20 overall prospect per MLB pipeline. I mean, think about that. And look, last regular season at the major league level, his overall numbers were not particularly good. 24 starts, ERA of 4.61, whip of 142. But he had a 7-start stretch from late July into September, during which he had an ERA of 2.75. So we saw right there what Irvin could be. And you look now at what Irvin has been this regular season: 31 starts, ERA 4.07, whip of 1.17, team high 179 and a third innings pitched. He has been the workhorse of the Nats pitching staff. He had a really good pre-All-Star break portion of the season. The post-All-Star break portion of the season was not going so well for a while. He at one point allowed at least 4 earned runs in 7 of 11 starts, but his last 2 starts now have gone well. The Nats' 5-1 win over the Atlanta Braves at Nationals Park on September 11th, 1 run in 6 innings, 5 strikeouts, 1 walk, and now what he did at the Mets on Monday night. Like Mackenzie Gore, it would appear, and we're not done yet, but it would appear that Jake Irvin, of having struggled, has gotten back on track, is hopefully ending his season in a strong way, and is going to finish with some good numbers, and is going to finish in a way that makes it feel like there is more good to come from this guy.
And that is meaningful. How you finish in this situation, I do think, is important. How you bounce back from a rough stretch like he had, just like Mackenzie Gore seems to be doing as well. That's important as well. I mean, think about this. He's still got, I believe, 2 starts to go. So we'll see. It could go either way, depending on how that goes along. But he's got a shot now to end the season with an ERA in the 3s and about 190 innings pitched. Tell me you wouldn't have taken that back in March from Jake Irvin. This was a big step forward season for him. And what I love about it is the strike throwing, the confidence that he's showing. This was another game that he basically just threw fastballs. I think it was only 12 or 13 curveballs that he threw in this one. Trusting that his stuff is good enough getting quick outs, getting back in the dugout, giving himself a chance to go deep in the game. It just fits in really nicely with the entire season that he's had. This has been one of the most pleasant and important developments of the season, I think, from the national standpoint.
And the Mets not just playing a meaningful game, but the Mets are a good team with a good offense, a bunch of good hitters. This was not the Marlins, who Jake Irvin did well against on Monday night. Jake Irvin on Monday night did well against one of the best teams in the National League.
Are you a lawyer that hates your boss even more than you hate jerks in Profar? Does your law firm always fail, just like the San Diego Padres? Well, Nats Chat sponsor Mason Kalfas is the best legal recruiter in the DC legal market, and you should give him a call. Mason specializes in working with law firm partners, associates, and senior government lawyers in antitrust, securities enforcement, energy, and life sciences. Mason is the founder of Zenith Legal, a 10-person legal recruiting firm with recruiters in D.C., New York, Philadelphia, and other cities. Mason has placed partners and associates in over half of the AmLaw 100 law firms. All conversations are 100% confidential and focused holistically on your career goals. Some lawyers change jobs for more money, some change jobs because of client conflicts, and some change because their colleagues are losers like the Padres and Phillies. Step up to a World Series winner and hire the best legal recruiter out there for free. Call Mason Kalfas today at 202-486-3535.
What's up, everybody? It's Heisman Trophy winner Matt Leinart. I've got a podcast called Throwbacks with actor Jerry Ferrara, where we'll be talking all things sports, but also so much more. We'll give you the behind-the-scenes stories from my days as the quarterback on an iconic college football team to Jerry's days as a star on an iconic TV series. So subscribe to Throwbacks wherever you download your podcasts and follow us on all social media at Throwback Show.
Now the pitch on the way. Swinging a ground ball back to Law. It's off his glove. It'll tie the game. He chases it down. Can't pick it up. There's no play. Everybody's safe. And it's the Nationals 1 and the Mets 1.
Jake Irvin in this 2-1 10-inning loss at the Mets on Monday night, big-time positive. But the Nats did lose the game, in which they did blow a 1-0 eighth-inning lead. 3 Nats relievers officially combined to allow 1 run, which was unearned in 2 innings. But there is a very interesting development with the Nats bullpen right now. So Derek Law got us going. Law came into the game with a runner on third. We know about the Derek Law struggles with inherited runners. Law, in what ended up being a 1-run eighth for the Mets, faced 4 batters, but got just 2 outs. He came into the game, bottom of the 8th, runner on third, 1 out, Nats up 1-0. Law gave up a 2-out RBI infield single by Jose Iglesias on a well-hit ball that went off Law to tie the game at 1. The single per StatCast exit velocity of 104.3 miles per hour, and Law then issued a 2-out 8-pitch walk of our old pal Jesse Winker. We then got Jose A. Ferrer to work a bottom of the 9th with the game tied at 1. Not Kyle Finnegan, Jose A. Ferrer. Davey Martinez lately has been using Ferrer in some higher leverage spots, and Ferrer in this game delivered a perfect bottom of the 9th to preserve the 1-1 tie, and he did this in facing the Mets numbers 4 through 6 batters, Pete Alonso, Brandon Nimmo, and Mark Vientos. But then Jacob Barnes, bottom of the 10th, gave up a walk-off 1-out RBI single by Starling Marte to left field for the 2-1 Nats loss. So Ferrer pitching in the 9th was one thing. Barnes in the 10th, another. Is Kyle Finnegan healthy? Was he available for this game?
He was healthy, and he was warming up in case they had taken the lead, and he would have pitched the bottom of the inning, whether it was the 9th or the 10th, in what would be a save situation. Clearly, Davey was saving him for the possibility of a save situation to close out the game. And we've talked about this before. On the road, it's not that uncommon for a manager to treat it that way. He's certainly not the only one who would do it. I get it for the 9th, and I liked Ferrer there, and that was a big-time step-up performance from him one day after he got his first career save. I didn't love it as much in the 10th, and I know it was the bottom of the lineup, but you already know you've got the winning run in scoring position because of the automatic runner. I don't care who you're facing. It doesn't take much now to give up that run. I think I would have liked to see Finnegan in the bottom of the 10th instead of holding on to him for an 11th inning that never came. So that part I didn't love, but I understand the philosophy. And I certainly had no problem with Ferrer pitching the 9th. I think that was a big moment for him. And I think part of Davey wanted to see how Ferrer would handle a situation like that.
Yeah, from a developmental standpoint, I love the Nats giving Ferrer higher leverage spots. But philosophically speaking, I mean, you end up not pitching the guy who in theory is your number one reliever. I mean, if the game matters, if you do, really care about winning the game, Finnegan never pitches in the game. You lose with Jacob Barnes on the mound. That's a problem. I hope that's something that Davey reconsiders for next season, if in fact the Nats are in contention. The trend with Finnegan continues. He has not pitched much these last few months. It has been remarkable, just like the lack of appearances for Finnegan over these last few months. Ever since the Nats didn't trade him, they've barely pitched him. It's really been odd.
For a guy who pitches a lot typically, like more than just a regular closer, often does, I think, because they're in a lot of close games. And I've seen at times over the years, Davey using him in tie games and even down a run if it's kind of late and close, or using him for more than one inning. And you're right, it hasn't come up as much lately. I don't know if it's because he has cooled off, obviously, although I think his last few outings have been better, or if it's just not the right situation exactly to do it. But we've talked about in the past, Finnegan traditionally has had some rough Septembers and has talked about his desire to finish strong and understand that he's got to sustain it all the way through the end. So you kind of want to see him out there a little bit more right now to see what he's got and see if he can finish out the year strong. So I was disappointed not to see him in this game, certainly in the 10th inning. I think that's a spot where maybe you're overthinking it a little bit and saying, okay, well, it's the bottom of the lineup and we still have to score. And then who's going to close it for us if we take the lead? No, you got to get to that point first. With an automatic runner in scoring position, put your best reliever out there and hope that he can get out of it.
He has made just 15 appearances since the Nats didn't trade him. 15 appearances since the 2024 MLB trade deadline. 15 appearances, that's a week for Derek Law. 15 appearances is what Finnegan has made since the Nats decided not to trade him. Well, we can nitpick what happened with the bullpen, but the biggest problem for the Nats in this game was their offense. 10 innings, just one run. The Nats totaled just 5 hits, which were a double and 4 singles. And one of the singles was a bunt single. Jacob Young, top of the third, first pitch bunt single toward first base. The Nats worked just one walk. The Nats went 1 for 10 with runners in scoring position. And CJ Abrams did not play again. I want to get your take on this. 4 consecutive games now, he has not played due to a sore left shoulder. When you, prior to the game on X, said that Abrams was available for pinch hitting duty, I said to myself, there's no way that Abrams is going to pinch hit in this game, because we always hear that from managers and then the player never ends up pinch hitting. But what do you make of this now? 4 consecutive games that Abrams doesn't start due to the shoulder.
So the message we were getting was that he is improving, and we did see him out there taking ground balls in the field during batting practice, and he apparently hit in the cage before the team went out to take BP. And it sounded to me like Davey Martinez was saying that CJ wanted to play, and they decided, let's hold you off and not take a chance. And he said, available to pinch hit, but he said it in a way that sounded more definitive than usual. It was like he will be available to pinch hit, not he might be available to pinch hit.
He'll definitely be available to pinch hit today. We're going to be very cautious.
And then you get to the end of the night in a game like this and you say, if he was available, he would have been used, because the situations were certainly there. And some of the hitters they had coming up with the game on the line were much inferior to CJ Abrams, at least in terms of potential to do some big damage. I know Abrams has struggled lately, but of course you'd rather have him at the plate than some of the guys they had up there instead. So that did say to me in the end that no, he probably wasn't available. I don't know if the condition worsened. I don't know if maybe it never was good enough all along. If this is earlier in the year and you reach 4 days without playing and he still can't pinch hit, you're saying to yourself, he's going to need to go on the IL, because now you're wasting a roster spot. I guess because we're in September, they have the extra position player, and there's only 2 weeks to go in the season anyways. You don't want to just totally shut him down and say that's it. So I guess they're just going to wait this out until he's ready. But that was a little frustrating because it felt like he had made some progress, and maybe he's good to go on Tuesday, but it would have been nice to see him at the plate with the game on the line on Monday, wouldn't it?
Yeah. I mean, that would have been a nice spot. You hate that as we had signs that he was maybe starting to come out of the slump, he gets hurt like this. And now you feel like when he comes back, whenever that is, he might have to, try to get himself going again. And, that progress is stalled. But we'll see. Maybe he hits the ground running if/when he does come back.
Hey, Nats Chat, want to tell you about Mint Mobile's premium wireless package starting at $15 a month when you purchase a 3-month plan. All plans come with high-speed data and unlimited talk and text delivered on the nation's largest 5G network. To get this new customer offer and your new 3-month premium wireless plan for just $15 a month, go to mintmobile.com/natschat. That's mintmobile.com/natschat. Cut your wireless bill to $15 a month at mintmobile.com/natschat. $45 upfront payment required. New customers on first 3-month plan only. Speed slower above 40 gigs on unlimited plan. Additional taxes, fees, and restrictions apply. See Mint Mobile for details.
Make Walters your spot for Monday Night Football next week as the Commanders aim to go 2-1. They visit Joe Burrow and the Bengals at 8:15 p.m.
Are you looking for tickets to an upcoming event? That's why you should download the Game Time app. Create an account and use code NATSCHAT for $20 off your first purchase. You get cheaper tickets, and it helps the podcast a bit. Sounds like a smooth 6-4-3 double play. Again, create an account and redeem the code NATSCHAT for $20 off. Terms apply. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed.
Uma pausa no seu podcast para contar que chegou o novo Peugeot 2008. Um carro que impressiona até quem já viu de tudo. Conheça uma experiência de puro prazer em dirigir com acabamento sofisticado e design inconfundível. Descubra como conforto e tecnologia podem elevar o nível da sua experiência de direção. Conheça o novo Peugeot 2008 e deixe a inspiração te guiar.
Here's the pitch. Tena lines a base hit into left field, and the Nationals will take the lead. He shoots a breaking ball into left. Good piece of hitting for Tena. Yepez scores. Nationals 1, Mets nothing. Tena with his 14th RBI. Drives one through the drawn-in infield.
The Nats' lone run in this game driven in by Jose Tena. He is the Nats' starting second baseman and number 5 batter, 1 for 4 with an RBI single. Did strike out twice, but Tena in the Nats' 1-run fourth, 1 out opposite field, RBI single to left field for a 1-0 Nats lead, although he was thrown out in an attempted steal of second base for the second out. The Nats' double in this game came from Juan Yepez. He was the Nats' starting first baseman and number 3 batter, 1 for 4 with a double. Yepez in the Nats' 1-run fourth, leadoff double to the left center field gap. James Wood in this game had a single. He is the Nats starting left fielder and number 2 batter, 1 for 4 with a single and a stolen base. He got the single off Edwin Diaz, the Mets closer, top of the 9th, leadoff first pitch, opposite field single into left field. Had to steal a second base. But, the Nats in this game, I mentioned it, 1 for 10 with runners in scoring position. Didn't put a lot of guys on base, but there were opportunities in this game, and the Nats just did not do much of anything offensively.
Yeah, I want to talk about those last 2 innings because that to me is where the game was lost. And if they just deliver 1 hit or even 1 fly ball in those situations, they very likely win this game. So James Wood did his job against one of the toughest closers out there in Edwin Diaz. Aggressively went after the first pitch, singled, and then stole second, put himself in scoring position. And then a nice piece of base running by him on the Yepez grounder to short. Or I'm sorry, it was actually the next one, the Garcia grounder to short, where it's that iffy play, like, do you go for third or not? The ball was just behind him, so he did go and he made it to get himself to third base. But you've got 2 ground outs there from Yepez and Garcia when a fly ball would have been much more effective. And then Tena, who's done a good job and yes, drove in the run earlier in the game, so you don't want to harp on him too much because he has been better than advertised, I think, at the plate. But man, couldn't even get the bat on the ball. And so now you strand the runner at third. And then really the toughest one is the 10th. You're now facing Reed Garrett, the former national castoff, by the way, who has been good for the Mets. But you got the automatic runner already in scoring position. They sack bunt him over to third with Ildemaro Vargas. And there were a lot of bunt attempts in this game. I get it, given who some of them are, and you saying get the winning run on third and just try to get him in. I get it. In the end, maybe I would have liked to see Vargas have a shot at driving him in himself. But then to me, the at-bat of the game is Keibert Ruiz. Man on third, 1 out, infield in. Just have to get the ball out of the infield and you're going to score the run. And he worked a good at-bat. He got it to 3-2. He took some pitches. He was not the usual overly aggressive Keibert Ruiz until he got to 3-2. And then he swung at a pitch that was so far off the plate it had no chance. And he grounded it right to the drawn-in shortstop. And that was that. And that's that moment. We've seen much better stuff from Keibert Ruiz here over the last month. But that's the moment. And if you're talking about a team that wants to be in this position next year of playing meaningful games in September, there are going to be games that come down to situations like this. And you need to convert with a man on third and 1 out. And if you're Keibert Ruiz, can you develop that ability to lay off that pitch way out of the zone with a 3-2 count, take your walk and leave it up to the next guy? Or is this just who he is? That, to me, was the whole game in a nutshell right there.
Was a real shame. He's had such a good September. Heck, he had a hit in this game. Top of the third, had a leadoff single into left field, but did not come through there. I also want to highlight Dylan Cruz. Cruz was the Nats starting right fielder and number 1 batter, 0 for 4 with 2 strikeouts. You look at Cruz now since he was promoted to the majors, 81 plate appearances. His OPS is down to 650. He's not doing so well here lately. Now, it's not panic time or anything like that, and 81 plate appearances is a small sample size. But, I think it is worth noting, lately, Dylan Cruz has not been the player who we were hoping he would be.
He's not getting a lot of fastballs to swing at, and I think that's the thing. They saw that he does damage to fastballs. He has done nothing against breaking balls so far, very little against changeups, and he's seeing a steady diet of that stuff. And I think that more than anything is accounting for it. So now it's up to him. Make the adjustment, show you can do that. Obviously, this kid is so talented and had success everywhere else that he's ever played. I think he's going to figure it out. But for right now, it is a grind for him to learn how to get hits when you're not getting a lot of good stuff to swing at, especially fastballs. Maybe needs to be aggressive earlier in the count. Maybe just needs to lay off the breaking stuff and hope that it falls out of the zone. But I think that's his number 1 issue right now. He's just not getting a lot to hit, I don't think.
No, and it does make me appreciate James Wood. Yes, lack of power, but we have not seen Wood struggle like this. I don't recall his OPS at any meaningful point since he was promoted to the majors being in the 600s like this with Cruz. So we'll hope that Cruz comes out of it here over these final few weeks. I mentioned the Nats now being 5-11 in extra inning games this season. I don't know how much stock you put into that. Teams' records in extra inning games can vary and can fluctuate year to year. And I don't know that it's always a sign of anything. But that does stand out. 16 extra inning games, you've lost 11 of them. The Nats lately have played a good number of extra inning games. This was the Nats' 6th extra inning game in less than a 6-week span. And it just feels like if the Nats do not score in their half of the 10th, they're doomed. They just don't win. It just feels like that's how it always goes. Every Nats extra inning game, it feels like, ends in 10 innings. It doesn't go beyond that. And so if the Nats don't do what they need to do in the 10th, that's it. Ball game over. And that record does stand out, 5-11.
And it's been going on for a few years. I think since the new rule was adopted, it's kind of been the same story for them. And I think this speaks to their struggles at situational hitting. You're gifted a runner in scoring position, and it's your job to get that guy home. And when you hit the ball on the ground as much as they do, when you play for 1 run instead of the big inning, at times this comes back to bite you. This is an area they're going to have to improve because whether you like it or not, and I don't like it, but the extra inning rule is here to stay, at least in the regular season. And if you're playing meaningful games someday soon, you're going to have to learn how to win those kind of games. That can be the difference between making the playoffs and not making the playoffs. And so it starts offensively, especially when you're the visiting team. You got to get that runner home. You got to put the pressure on the opposing team to score their runner and not just give them this free pass, essentially saying, okay, well, you can now win the game with a couple of well-hit balls that don't even have to fall in for hits. So I think it starts with that. And the other part of it is it probably has to do with a little bit with bullpen depth and the way that Davey's managed, as you said, not always using Finnegan on the road in those spots. But I think more than anything, it boils down to a lack of execution with runners in scoring position, which is what every at-bat in extra innings is.
And then I mentioned this loss clinching, the Nats now having 5 consecutive losing regular seasons. We knew this moment was coming. It now has come. I had this thought, though, recently. I'm interested in your opinion on this. So because of COVID, you had the shortened 2020 season in which the Nats did not do well, but it seemed reasonable to look at that season and say, well, we're not sure what to make of that season. So let's, have the band still intact and go for it again in 2021. And after the very good June 2021, everything fell apart in July 2021, as we have chronicled. Here's my question. As we're now, again, 5 consecutive losing regular seasons, if COVID never happens and 2020 is a full 162-game regular season and the Nats end up having a bad 2020 season, do you think the rebuild would have started then? Do you think the fire sale that happened in the middle of the 2021 season would have happened to some extent in the 2020 season, and that we might be a year further along in the rebuild timeline? Or do you think that the Nats still would have tried to give it another go for the 2021 season? What I'm getting at is this. We talk about the cost of COVID to the Nats in terms of not having that victory lap season. Is it possible that another cost of COVID is that it delayed this necessary rebuild by a full season, or would that rebuild not have started until 2021 anyway?
So I get what you're saying, and I think in hindsight, absolutely, it would have been probably the move to make in July of 2020 if you have a normal season, to go ahead and concede that. I don't believe they would have been there, though, because think about the contract statuses. You still had Scherzer through 21. You had Trey Turner for multiple years after that. You still had Juan Soto, of course, for quite a long time after that. You still had a pretty high payroll. You had what you were hoping eventually was going to be a healthy Strasburg. At that time, you don't really know how that's all going to go. So my hunch is that even though it may have been the right move to start the process then, that they would have said, you know what, it was a hangover year. It didn't go well. We had some injuries. We still have all these great players under contract. Let's go for it again in 21. You sign Kyle Schwarber, those other moves, and you make one more run at it in 21 and then realize, no, it is time to tear it down. So I think they would have still approached it that way. But in hindsight, you're right. If you knew what was coming, it would have made more sense to start the rebuild then. I just don't think, given the contract statuses, especially of Scherzer, and not really knowing at that point that Strasburg was done, I think they would have proceeded as they did and tried to win in 21 anyways.
Yeah, and I mean, you would have been trading Trey Turner a year earlier. There are people who thought that they traded him too soon in 2021. Imagine trading him in 2020. And I mean, how rare is it the season after you win a World Series, you dive headfirst into a rebuild? Like, that's rare. Usually there is an at least somewhat gradual decline. You go from winning a World Series to then maybe you're a mediocre team for a season or two, and then you enter into the rebuild. What makes this such a unique circumstance, well, there are a lot of things, but one is that win the World Series and then the team fell off a cliff, and it was sudden like that. Like there was really no transition period. You went from really good to really bad really fast.
It's kind of like the Florida Marlins, who won it in 97 and then completely tore it down in 98. Very different situation. That was a fire sale. That was about money more than anything. That's not what the Nationals were facing. But, look, the Rangers are going to finish with a losing record after winning the World Series last year. I don't know what their intentions are of how they're going to approach this winter and whether they're going to try to gear up and go for it again or not. So it's not totally uncommon to have that letdown year, but you're right. It would be uncommon to totally tear it down and say, okay, you win the World Series and then you don't have another winning record for many years to come. That's a little unusual.
This installment of the Nats Chat podcast brought to us by Mason Kalfas and his team of 10 legal recruiters at Zenith Legal in Washington, D.C. Check out Mason's website today, zenithlegal.com, or call or text Mason anytime, 202-486-3535. You can hit us up on X at Nats_chat. You can email the podcast, natschatpodcast@gmail.com. You can find us on our website, natschatpodcast.com, at which you can purchase a Nats Chat podcast t-shirt, and we appreciate the support very much. All Nationals radio highlights on Nats Chat are courtesy of 106.7 The Fan. For Mark Zuckerman, I'm Al Galdi. We thank you for listening, and we'll talk to you next time on the Nats Chat podcast.